So before we get into the topic at hand, I want you guys to check out this guy's lineup. He only has 3 players that cannot shoot a 3-point shot. Al Horford, Blake Griffin, and Marc Gasol. So you know how this game is going to go, but it's nothing unusual. You guys just see me take on a guy who does this kind of thing anyway. So expect your usual momentum BS and all types of other craziness. It's going to be a close game at the end, so pay attention to that fourth quarter. Anyway, the original topic was supposed to be about the finals. I really should have did my player predictions like I said, because I was right about every single series except for Houston versus Portland. And also the difference between me and a lot of other people who talk sports, I like to put my money where my mouth is. I'm not people who follow me on Twitter know I like to bet, I like to gamble, so in sports it is my thing, it's an art. In terms of this, the final series, I could have broken it down, but a lot of people are giving you some pretty weak explanations of what happened and what they saw and why it happened. A lot of people changed their picks around the 3rd or 4th game. But so I wanted to talk about something that a subscriber actually mentioned during one of my Twitch live streams. Now, I don't always broadcast my Twitch things on YouTube. Actually, I hardly ever do that. Most of the time, I just do it on Twitter. I share it on there, and I'll play a couple of first seed games, and I'll talk to the people in the chat. So, a couple of my subscribers or followers on Twitch, whatever, they were talking about Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan. And I thought it was a very interesting debate. Why not have a video about this? Because there have been quite a few players who have played in the last 3 decades. I'm talking about from the 90s, the early 2000s, and the 2010s. And, a few of them are still here today, such as Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan. And then there's also, along with those guys I just mentioned, there's people who have been MVPs. Everyone I just named, Allen Iverson, Shaquille O'Neal, he was an MVP who played in 3 decades. Kevin Garnett was one. So there's been a bunch of good players, and there's more players who recently retired, like Jason Kidd, Ray Allen's still playing, Paul Pierce is still playing, T-Mac just retired, Vince Carter's still playing, and he was doing pretty good. He could have been, he's top 3 and 6 man of the year last year, the way he was playing. And Manu Ginobili, these guys have stood the test of time, and they're actually defying it because they're lasting much longer than the average player. But out of all the players I mentioned, there's 2 of them that are still here today, and 2 of them that probably had the most successful runs after the Jordan era. And when you think about the best teams after the Jordan era, for me it comes down to 3 teams. The Miami Heat, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the San Antonio Spurs. So when having this discussion, there's a lot to factor in. And before I tell you guys exactly what I'm going to pick, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of the background, the facts on these guys. So Kobe Bryant, he played 18 seasons. Tim Duncan, he had 17 seasons because, he came in a year after. Kobe Bryant has 5 NBA titles. Tim Duncan has 5 NBA titles. And we can just compare their first 17 seasons, the first 17 of Kobe and first 17 of Tim Duncan, because Kobe only played 6 games last year, so that doesn't really count. It's not a fair comparison there. Although I guarantee he would have had nothing that he could have did to alter Tim Duncan's road to the finals. Kobe Bryant has 1 MVP, which I have gone on record before by saying I don't even think he was a top 2 player in the year that he won the MVP, which was seen in the finals, but that's a whole other story. I can't take that away from him because the NBA unfortunately gave it to him. Tim Duncan has 2 MVPs. Kobe has 2 finals MVPs that he got in his last 2 finals because Shaq had the first 3. And Tim Duncan had 3 finals MVPs, and although he could have arguably had 4, but Kawhi Leonard did make the difference during this last final because when he upgraded his offense, they won. So he's the most valuable, I guess, going off of that metric alone. And one of the reasons I like to use these stats, well, not stats, these awards rather than stats, because stats don't tell the whole story. You can tell any story you want by showing a person's statistics. And I told you guys before that I believe a lot of players have empty statistics, i.e. Kevin Love. Although I'm not as much of a statistic person as I used to be a big statistic person. My screen names used to be about stats, but I feel like now it's for younger people and people who need to find a way to quantify the greatness of players. So, Then when it comes to the All NBA first team selection, Kobe has 11, Tim has 10, although that's controversial for both of them. Kobe has 2 second teams, Tim has 3, and Kobe has 2 third teams, Tim has 1. So Kobe had the nod there. I don't count all-star games because, as we saw last year, it doesn't matter. Kobe Bryant was the leading vote getter among shooting guards, even though he wasn't even available to play. So it's the same with Shaq, and it's the same with Allen Iverson. I just throw that out the window. It's a popularity contest that is not truly based on skill as much as it should be. When it comes to all defense, Kobe has 9 first-team all defenses. Tim Duncan has 8. Now, that should be the opposite way around. We all know that Kobe was a monster at the perimeter in his earlier years, but as he got older, he focused on his offense and pretty much let people go off. For instance, how many points did Carmelo score on Kobe? How many points did Gilbert Arenas? Gilbert Arenas dropped 60 on Kobe. Who else was there? He gave up. Who else did he give up 60 to? I think Iverson. It escapes me at the moment, but I know he's given up a few 60-point games in his day. And then when it comes to the all-defense second team, Kobe Bryant has 2, Tim Duncan has 6. And with the emergence of stars like Dwight Howard and Kevin Garnett being arguably the best defensive power forward to play the game, you know, you couldn't really expect Tim Duncan to get anything higher than that often. So it's a grand total of 12 for Kobe, all defensive teams, and 14 for Tim Duncan, all defensive teams. So let's break this down a little bit further. Where else can we go? Because they're pretty much identical with the nod going to Tim Duncan so far based off of the awards. Now we can go to the regular season success. Tim Duncan is like Aaron Rodgers, or I should say the Spurs are like the Packers. You had to have one bad year so that way you could have a series of dominant years. The Spurs were bad one time on purpose, but they tanked and managed to somehow get Tim Duncan away from the clutches of the Boston Celtics and their horrible season back in 1997. And they managed to grab what turned out to be the greatest, arguably, power forward / center of all time. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later if I have time. But Tim Duncan, he has had 50-plus wins in every single season except for the one season where they only had 50 games in the lockout. That's incredible. He's had over 70% winning every single year that he's ever played. And this is a guy who's had numerous lineup changes. He didn't have the fortune of playing in a very large market, which is easy to attract marquee free agents and lots of money and Time Warner deals which let you avoid having caps and things like that. Instead, he's just made it work, and he's been consistent, and he even played 4 years of college before coming out, and he's still arguably the best player over 35 today, which is saying a lot. He's breaking the mold. Now, Kobe Bryant, he's being inside the limelight. He's had his fair share of controversy. They say he's not a guy who's easy to get along with. He's a great leader. He's a great motivator. He has the killer will, the strongest we've ever seen ever since Michael Jordan himself. This is a man who's had to deal with other stars and having conflict with them and managed to go play alongside many other all-stars and somehow still get the job done. Except for the year that he didn't make the playoffs after they had the coaching change with Rudy Tomlin and whatever. So they both had their changes, their alterations, but at this point, I really have to give the nod to Tim Duncan. All things given, the personal awards, the team success, the struggle it took to get there, it all just points in Tim Duncan's favor. And he's never had an inconsistent year. This guy, he's even changed his entire offense. He used to be the offense. But I didn't really have enough time with this video. I could have gone much further into it. Let me know what you guys think based off everything you've heard so far. And this game was close. His 3-point spam got him back into it, but it wasn't good enough to keep him in the game. And the player of the game, because the game was so spread out, ended up being Gary Payton with only 7 points. Crazy.